You know, the kind of story that starts off innocent like a peaceful vacation in the countryside but quickly plunges you into an inescapable nightmare? Well, get ready to discover how a simple search for tranquility can turn into psychological terror in the most unexpected way. The Witch's Sinister Smile isn't just a local legend, it's the kind of tale that brands your soul and leaves scars that time can't erase. Many believe that oral traditions are outdated relics, but when a mysterious village hides secrets passed down from generation to generation, the danger is very real. We're not just talking about old rag dolls or eerie portraits hanging on the walls, we're talking about supernatural presences that refuse to be forgotten. Want to know how an old country house, filled with ancient toys and extinguished candles, became the stage for a macabre ritual and a desperate escape? If you think you've seen everything when it comes to horror, buckle up. This story blends elements that go far beyond cheap jump scares. We're talking about ancient legends, cursed trunks, ghostly apparitions, and, of course, a sinister smile that you won't be able to shake from your memory anytime soon. But before we dive deeper, consider this a warning: after hearing this story, you may never look at a wooden doll the same way again. You know that urge to run away from the chaos of the city and find peace in nature? That's exactly what this family was after when they decided to spend their vacation in a mysterious village hidden among misty mountains. The place looked like something straight out of an old postcard: stone cottages, narrow cobblestone streets. They rented an old country house with wooden shutters creaking in the wind and a garden overgrown with ivy. At first, the atmosphere of horror felt like nothing more than imagination, but soon, they realized there was something different in the air. A heavy, unexplainable weight. Despite the village's beauty, suspicion crept in quickly. The locals were friendly but oddly reserved, with sidelong glances and hesitation when asked simple questions about the house. The region's oral traditions whispered of old stories, but they were told with a cautious tone that made your skin crawl. Curious, the parents decided to explore the old country house, while the kids played in the yard, kicking up dry leaves under trees that seemed to whisper secrets to the wind. It would have been the perfect vacation spot if not for one unsettling detail: every night, a thick fog would roll down from the mountain, wrapping the village in an almost supernatural silence. Time itself seemed to stop. And within that charming setting, the house began to show its true nature: doors creaking open on their own, candles snuffing out, and old toys scattered around as if someone or something was still playing with them. The feeling of being watched grew stronger by the day. One late afternoon, driven by pure curiosity, the protagonist discovered something odd: a narrow staircase hidden behind a bookshelf in the main hallway. A narrow, creaky staircase that led to a locked attic. From that point on, what was supposed to be a relaxing getaway began to spiral into psychological terror, the kind that leaves scars you never truly heal from. And this was just the beginning. What lay ahead would be far darker than they ever imagined. Curiosity is funny: the more you try to ignore it, the harder it pushes. And so, led by a strange restlessness, the protagonist found an old, rusty key resting on a beam and decided to unlock the attic door. As it creaked open, a wave of mold and rotting wood filled the air. The place felt frozen in time, blanketed in dust, ancient toys piled in corners, and rag dolls strewn about as if someone had left in a hurry. At the center of the attic sat a rocking chair, swaying ever so slightly, though no one had touched it. Beside it, a framed portrait caught the boy's eye: a woman with a stern expression, dark hair pulled tightly into a bun, and the most disturbing detail: a sinister smile frozen on her lips. The kind of smile that, the longer you stared, the more it seemed to mock your sanity. It felt as if her painted eyes were following you, thickening the horror that now clung to the room. Instinctively, he tried to shake the feeling, but something about the rag dolls pulled his attention. Each seemed to have its own personality, some with sad eyes, others with expressions of pure terror stitched into their faded faces. Among the old toys was a wooden doll, crude and worn, that seemed different, almost aware. The abandoned candles scattered around the room added an even more sinister touch, as if the place was waiting for some dark ritual to resume. After that visit to the attic, nothing felt the same. The air in the house turned heavy, as though a supernatural presence had been awakened. The boy tried to dismiss it, but he swore the rag dolls changed positions at night. And the woman's creepy portrait? It began to appear in different parts of the house, as if it insisted on shadowing every move the family made. And of course, the wooden doll, with its button eyes, now seemed far more than just an ancient toy. Nobody expects to be attacked by a wooden doll on vacation, but that's exactly what happened. It started when the younger brother, innocently playing in the hallway, came across the doll, the one with the black button eyes. One touch, and it sprang to life. At first, subtle movements. Then, swift, silent attacks as if driven by some malevolent will. It was hard to believe their eyes. This old toy had become the embodiment of psychological terror. The younger boy cried in panic as he struggled against the doll's relentless assaults. As surreal as it seemed, the parents witnessed it too. They tried to rationalize, maybe it was just a toy falling over. Maybe it was their tired minds playing tricks. But soon, it was undeniable, the cursed doll moved on its own. Its crooked smile, almost a sneer, seemed to mock their attempts to stay calm. The horror hanging over the old country house grew thicker by the second. They tried to throw the doll away, but somehow, it always returned. It would appear in the most unlikely places: on the bed, the sofa, even inside cabinets. Worse still, its button eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark, like two black embers watching their every move. With candles scattered around the house to fight the deepening gloom, the dancing shadows only made the scene more chilling. It wasn't just imagination, the wooden doll carried something old, something unspeakably dark. Ignoring what was happening became impossible. The once cozy, mysterious village now seemed complicit in the silent terror surrounding them. Deep down, the protagonist knew it was all tied to the creepy portrait of the woman in the attic. Each attack by the doll was a reminder something far worse was coming. And maybe, just maybe, playing with ancient toys in a forgotten old house was the worst vacation choice they had ever made. At nightfall, when the heavy mist would creep in and smother the village, the old country house transformed into a stage for horrors untold. It was during one of these deathly quiet nights that the protagonist saw her, the woman from the portrait, gliding down the halls. Her long dress dragged along the floor, and her pale face, illuminated only by flickering candlelight, wore that same sinister smile. The spectral figure seemed so real the boy could almost hear the shuffle of her footsteps. She wasn't just wandering aimlessly, she was looking for something. Or someone. She would pause outside doors, silently peeking through the cracks. The psychological terror hit its peak when, for a brief moment, her lifeless eyes met the boy's. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. It was as if an invisible force pinned him there, breathless and frozen. Each appearance made the house colder, darker, more hostile. By day, the family tried to act as if nothing had happened, but the signs of the supernatural presence were everywhere. Dark stains appeared on the walls, the floor groaned under unseen weight, and worse, the woman's sinister smile seemed to multiply, spreading to other portraits throughout the house. It was as if she was extending her dominion, slowly eroding everyone's sanity. It became clear she didn't just want to scare them, she wanted them to stay. The kids, once carefree in the yard, now refused to leave their rooms. Even then, huddled in silence, they knew they weren't alone. Night after night, the woman returned tireless, carrying not just sorrow but a simmering fury. Her smile, once simply unsettling, was now an omen, a warning that the house's story was far from over. And maybe, just maybe, she was still hunting for new souls for her collection of ancient toys. Things, which were already strange enough, took an even darker turn on an especially silent night. While the parents slept and the protagonist tried to distract himself from the fear by reading under the faint glow of candles, the younger brother vanished, gone without a trace, like smoke. After several agonizing minutes, they found him locked inside an old chest in the attic, adorned with strange symbols and a rusted lock. The sight of the little boy, frozen in fear with wide, terrified eyes, sent chills down their spines. What was even more disturbing was what surrounded the chest: old toys scattered in a circle, rag dolls, and, at the center, the infamous wooden doll, as if it were orchestrating the macabre ritual. Above it all, the woman's sinister portrait loomed, watching the scene with that haunting smile that seemed to vibrate in the heavy air. The atmosphere of horror was tangible. Half-melted candles completed the picture, casting flickering shadows that danced along the walls. It became clear that the supernatural presence was reenacting something, a dark, forgotten ritual buried in the village's oral tradition. They tried everything to open the cursed chest, but the lid wouldn't budge, as if glued shut by an invisible force. In a final act of desperation, the protagonist yanked the wooden doll out of the circle. Instantly, there was a loud click, the lock popped open on its own, and the brother was freed, trembling and muttering incoherent things about a woman who wanted to play forever. The traumatic scars of that night would stay with them forever. Any lingering doubts that they were dealing with something beyond human comprehension disappeared completely. The once cozy country house now reeked of terror. The mysterious village, with its whispered legends, seemed to have known all along but had said far too little. The woman's portrait, the cursed trunk, the circle of ancient toys, it all pointed to a sinister ritual that defied common understanding. And the worst part? The gnawing sensation that it wasn't truly over, that they were still caught in a macabre game, made the need to escape feel as urgent as a wildfire out of control. There's no other way to describe it. It was a desperate escape. As soon as they pulled the little brother out of the cursed trunk, the house seemed to awaken. Doors slammed by themselves, candles flickered without wind, and the old toys began falling from the shelves as if tossed by unseen hands. Every step toward the door was a battle against rising panic. The woman's sinister portrait, now hanging high above the staircase, seemed to smile even wider, mocking their frantic attempt to flee. As they rushed downstairs, the floorboards groaned and creaked as if the house itself was trying to hold them back. The wooden doll appeared one final time, blocking the front door, its button eyes gleaming ominously in the dim light. It took raw courage or pure survival instinct to kick it aside and make a path. They fled, abandoning their suitcases, their belongings, and any remnants of their normal lives left inside that cursed house. The atmosphere of horror seemed to chase them all the way to the gate, but not one of them dared look back. They reached the car, hearts pounding, the children sobbing, the parents exchanging glances that said everything without a word. The engine took what felt like an eternity to start, and when it finally roared to life, the thick mist seemed to swallow the old country house behind them, as if it had been nothing more than a terrible hallucination. The silence in the car was crushing, broken only by muffled sobs and heavy breathing. Relief mingled with fear that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't left it all behind. They drove back to the village and found refuge in a small hotel, tucked away from the main road. Even there, the feeling of a supernatural presence seemed to linger quietly. They couldn't be sure if they had truly escaped or if part of the house, the woman with the sinister smile, the old toys, the cursed trunk, had decided to follow. It was in the modest warmth of that hotel room that they began to understand that the psychological terror they had faced would not be easy to shake off. Still trying to process what had happened, the family met a local woman at the hotel, one of those elder faces lined by time, with eyes that had clearly seen more than they cared to. As they sat having breakfast, she approached with a sad smile and uttered a sentence that made their blood run cold. "You stayed at the witch's house, didn't you?" The heavy silence at the table was answer enough. With the calm of someone carrying the weight of old stories, she began to speak of the village's oral tradition. According to the local legend, the house's former owner was a woman who lived in isolation and developed strange habits. Rumor had it she made a dark pact to preserve her youth. To achieve this, she would trap the souls of children inside old toys, rag dolls, wooden dolls, anything that could carry their essence. The candles, always lit during her rituals, and the cursed trunk were integral to her sinister practices. The villagers knew the story, but few dared speak of her sinister smile, said to mark those who crossed her path. The old woman added that ever since the house had been abandoned, curious visitors had been drawn to it, as if the supernatural presence was looking for new toys for its collection. "She favors the little ones," the woman said, in a tone that wavered between compassion and fear. The village, shrouded in mist almost year-round, was known for its eerie legends, but like any oral tradition, many dismissed it as mere superstition. After all, who would believe that a sinister portrait and a macabre smile could linger across generations? Her warning was clear: never return. Not to retrieve what they had left behind, not out of curiosity. Because whatever lived in that old country house didn't like being disturbed. The family listened in silence, not daring to doubt her words. Deep down, they knew this wasn't just a ghost story meant to scare outsiders. The atmosphere of horror, the desperate escape, the local legend, it all fit together too well. And somehow, the feeling of being watched still lingered. Weeks passed since their desperate flight, but forgetting what had happened in that mysterious village was impossible. The younger brother woke up screaming in the middle of the night, speaking of button eyes and rag dolls whispering his name. The family tried to move on, to rationalize it all as just a local legend that had gotten under their skin. But the psychological terror they had endured wasn't so easily erased like an invisible stain. It clung to every corner of their memories. In quiet moments, the protagonist could still hear the distant creaking of the attic's rocking chair. And sometimes, when passing antique shops, he would get chills at the sight of old toys on display, as if the supernatural presence had left an invisible scar. The candles they once used to push back the dark now only served to revive uncomfortable memories of those macabre rituals. Tiny details in everyday life became triggers, bringing back vivid images of the sinister portrait and that unforgettable smile. They sought psychologists, started therapy. Words like trauma and emotional scars became part of the family's vocabulary. But what few understood was that the terror they faced wasn't just in their minds, it was real. The woman from the oral traditions, the cursed trunk, the ancient toys, they weren't just symbols. They were living proof that not every story told in old villages is mere superstition. Sometimes, the local legend is a warning, one we ignore at a high cost. Years later, even with time and distance, fear remained a constant visitor. Every thick fog, every shadow cast in a darkened room, brought back that feeling of being watched. Maybe they would never know if they had truly escaped, or if, somehow, they carried the mark of the woman with the sinister smile with them. One thing was certain after that experience: they would never look at an old country house the same way again. Nor should they. After surviving a story filled with psychological terror, supernatural presences, and ancient traditions, one inevitable question remains: how many other local legends hide truths behind sinister smiles and seemingly harmless rag dolls? Behind those peaceful vacations and charming villages, how many ancient secrets are just waiting to be awakened? And have you ever wondered what might be hidden in the attic of your own memory or even your own home? How often do we ignore the signs, convincing ourselves they're nothing more than superstition? Perhaps, like the old country house story, the greatest mistake is to dismiss what oral tradition tries to warn us about. Now, I want to invite you to reflect. What would you do if you came face to face with a supernatural presence? Would you ignore it, confront it, or run? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your own experiences if you dare. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on more intriguing stories and mysteries we promise you'll never forget.